Alrighty, and we are back. Episode 13 of Chasing 69. It is Teddy, happy birthday. We are not recording this on your birthday, but it is Wednesday.
Oh, dang. I didn't even
15th.
think of that.
You're
That's
a crisp
sweet.
25 years old, sporting the breakup beard tonight, the Zach Wilson jersey. Breakup beard with no breakup.
I'm shaving tonight, so I figured I got to let the people see. I still don't like really have a beard, but I've come a long way
compared to the way that it used to grow. And I mean, that's
it kind of looks like your beard.
I mean, it's like everybody. It's like it starts off really shaky, and then some parts get better, and then eventually it kind of just turns into the full thing.
Yeah, every once in a while though, I'll look at myself and I'll be like, I got a pretty decent beard, but then you look at a picture of someone who actually has a beard, like, and it's like, oh, I don't have.
He'll never hear this, but that happens to me every time I see Joe Pettigrossi.
I knew you were gonna say that.
Every time I see his beard, I'm just like, yeah.
I don't think I'll mind.
Every time.
No last names, bro.
Every time, Joe Ped, we'll call him that. Bleep out the first one. I'm not going to go bleep out the first one. Every time I see his beard, I'm like, that's an actual beard. And I don't have that. But anyways, happy birthday from
Thank you.
Past. I'm wishing you one in advance, even though it's today. But yeah, make sure before we get in everything today, we're going to be going over our Reading the Room series, part 3, talking wide receivers and linebackers, got some housekeeping. We're going to throw up for a little bit about linebackers, and we're going to get really excited about wide receivers. But before we get into all of that, make sure to follow us on Twitter at NYJ_chasing69, YouTube, same page. Make sure to follow Teddy on Twitter at Teddy Huncho. I'm at Blake Andrew Pace. Like, subscribe, review, share the podcast. Appreciate the support and the listens. Teddy, we started off last episode talking about what a disastrous week it was in the household with, Hannah, your significant other, not being able to go to the Bieber concert and your dog taking a little bit of a tumble.
That's true.
We were hoping things were just going to be all right, but not only is Justin Bieber's face paralyzed, your dog is in a cast.
Yeah, he's got a broken leg, broke both his bones in his leg, which is no good.
Crazy.
But we took him to the surgeon today. No surgery is required, so they splinted him up, hoping he can be good in 4 to 6 weeks. Hoping he doesn't Mekhi Becton it and make it 6 to 10 weeks, or 6 to 10 months, excuse me. But I'm happy for him that no surgery is good. My wallet's happy for that.
Yeah. Oh God.
So like this, and maybe one day we'll get famous and make some money. But yeah, I don't know. Things are going okay. It's a busy life in a Casa de Pristash, but I'm excited to see you this upcoming weekend. See a couple of our other buddies, the Twins, and ready to talk Jets. Ready to talk about. I don't want to talk about the linebacker room remotely, but we're
gonna get it out of the way first. We'd been doing offense first the last 2 weeks, but we just want to get linebackers out of the way.
Because we're basic. Because we're
basic. Yeah. Teddy, speaking of Mekhi Becton, that's where we're going to start off housekeeping this week. He showed up to mandatory minicamp, but he is not expected to practice. This is just another stage of the lingering injury from early in this past NFL season. And I saw a tweet just from a random fan that summed it up pretty perfectly. I wish I had kind of screenshotted or clipped it, but it was along the lines of being like, at this point, I'm not frustrated with Mekhi Becton. I'm just frustrated with the fact that we were told this was going to be a 6 to 8 week injury, and it's been 6 to 8 months, and he's still on the sideline. So, from your perspective as a fan of the team, and when I look at it, he was drafted to be a franchise left tackle. We've seen potential that he could be a franchise tackle in this league. We're getting closer. We're not at the season yet, but we're getting closer. And it's definitely not a pleasant sign to see that he's still not ready to perform.
No, not at all. I think maybe this show should just turn into us recapping random tweets that we saw, because after I saw a random tweet from some random fan, and that's actually kind of disrespectful. I think it was from Glenn Naughton, who I think actually.
Oh, look at you! You got a name.
I think he actually makes Jets content, but I'm not positive about that. But he tweeted, and this, I mean, it could be wrong, but he tweeted just about how, like, maybe it was the Jets staff who got it wrong, and maybe they misdiagnosed the injury. And it's just like coming up with any excuse you can at this point. Like, I'm a
Yeah.
Mekhi Becton supporter. I mean, we all saw what he did when he actually was on the field, and no one actually wants to think as a fan that he's not committed to the team, and he's not doing all he's got to do to get right. And I'm not saying he's not doing everything he's got to do, but I mean, the fact that we've had this injury just lingering, and it's not like they changed the diagnosis and said, oh, he'll be ready in 6 to 8 months. All it's been is we've just gone and gone and gone with him being injured, and we've just hoped that, oh, maybe he'll be better soon, and he just continues to not be. So I mean, it doesn't have anything to do with Mekhi Becton and his work ethic. Like, I don't like when people kind of turn it into that, but it just has to do with, this is not good. I mean, it's just not, so it's definitely really frustrating. I'd like to see him out there, especially after, he hasn't been around. Everyone's been talking about how he's not reporting to the voluntary practices and things like that. And it's like, all right, you're finally here. Oh, but you can't play. And we didn't know 2 weeks ago that you weren't going to be able to play. It's not like this is something that well, he's still working through it. We all were hoping that he was going to be better, and he's not. So definitely really frustrating.
Yeah, I totally agree with where you're coming from. I mean, the closest thing that I can think is a comparison. I mentioned it before the show with you as well too, is like the equivalent to almost a Zion Williamson type injury in New Orleans, and switching leagues a little bit, but it's still guys that, play at a size that is uncommon, I guess, and it's not
Yeah.
it's not a detriment to them. They're both crazy athletic for the size that they're at, but sometimes when you get injured at that size, it might take a little bit just because your body is holding so much. And I was listening to an interview with the Pelicans GM David Griffin the other week, and he was talking about it. It was like, no, we just weren't, the bone wasn't healing the way that we expected it to. And when that happens, there's no update. There's no injury update. It's just like this, we're just waiting for it to heal. And so
Right.
that could very well be the situation here where they're just looking at him and they're like, hey, we are just not getting the results, and there's no necessary update as to why that's happening, but sometimes that's just what happens. And so when I listened to that, and like I said, I feel like Zion's injury is a little bit different in terms of just obscurity. But when I heard that, I was like, okay, with Becton, I mean, maybe it is just the fact that, at his size and his stature, something just isn't progressing. And so, yeah, I don't know if it's necessarily a blame on him anymore. I'm sure he's just as frustrated by this. He wants to be playing. I don't think he wants to be sitting out. He knows that, man, I just started off a really great NFL career. And if he's a guy that cares about that next contract or winning, he wants to be out there. So I don't think that it's an effort thing on him anymore. There could have been concerns about that when you were like, oh, he's away from the team, he's doing other things. But, now that he's back and he's still not ready, I kind of just look at it as like, this is probably just a really freaky injury to a player that's of a freaky stature. And you can just cross your fingers and hope that as we get closer to the season, we start to see some improvements.
Yeah. Yeah. And I like, it's, fans just want to, I mean, I guess Twitter, like Jets Twitter, wants to always make it like an argument about, well, either like Mekhi's a stud and we love him and he's the best, or Mekhi stinks and he doesn't try. And it's like, at the end of the day, he's a guy who's a star, but if he's not going to be able to get his body right to be out on the field, that's an issue, and it's an issue for the Jets, and
Right.
it's just something we got to hope that goes our way. It's one of the many things that we're just hoping breaks right for us, as opposed to it goes the wrong way. But I mean, it affects the way you look at this O-line if he's not out there, for sure. I mean, and it's something that we need to address,
Yeah.
and I guess brings us to our next point. I mean, they're bringing in Riley Reid, your favorite player.
Your favorite actress, I believe.
Right. Yeah.
Riley
So
Reef.
I'll
Riley
let you
Reef.
tell me about Riley Reid, but
Riley
that's
Reef.
cool. I mean, it's important that we actually think about, okay, what if Mekhi Becton's not here, is my point.
Well, Exactly. And that brings us to this point. And I typed his name wrong in the rundown. It's just Reef. But
I thought we were talking about Riley Reed, the
no,
porn star.
yes, the 120 pound
I thought
porn
she came in
star
and visited with
is,
them.
oh, I'm sure she probably has tried to. I mean, have you seen Zach Wilson or Robert Saleh, Braxton Berrios? Everybody's favorite porn star and free agent tackle, Riley Reed. No, Riley Reef.
Now we know where
former,
your standards are when it comes to men.
yeah, right. Other good looking men, all of them. I'm not a.
Oh
You're
no,
more of
they
like
are.
a. You're
No,
more of
no,
like a
they are.
Dan Feeney type.
I'm just saying it's a little different, yeah, than if you had said like
Dan
I
Feeney.
don't know. Right.
So okay, so Riley Reef, former first round pick to the Detroit Lions, spent a bunch of years in Minnesota, comes in, takes a visit with the Jets, and I'm assuming, as we all should, that this is just look, got to have a backup plan if Becton isn't around. And
Morgan Moses 2.0.
Yeah, and he's a tackle that's been serviceable, and you nailed that right there. It's even if Becton is back, I'm always for bringing in depth tackles. You know, you never know what guy's going to take a step back or who's going to get hurt next. Solid guy, definitely best years are behind him, but that you're not bringing him in to be your franchise tackle, and that's why he's available in June. So at the point of us recording, there has been no signing, and I believe they met late last week. But if anything happens between now and Wednesday, that'll be funny. Just up to this point, just another guy to bring in.
Yeah, I hope they get it done. I mean, it seems like their depth on the line is one of those things that is not looking great at the moment. And I think it's definitely one of the things that they still need to address and get better at. So just to bring this guy in would make me feel a lot more comfortable, especially with all this Mekhi Becton news coming out.
Yeah, and he's not a world beater, but I think that's the best part about having what you believe to be a solid offensive line. You know, you put Vera Tucker next to him. You've got the left side that's feeling pretty strong as well too. Worst case scenario, he's got to come in there and he's joining a good offensive line. I feel like his last few years in Minnesota where things fell apart, the entire line kind of took a step back. And I feel like it's a lot better to be an average player alongside a great offensive line than an average player around a bunch of other average offensive linemen. So when I look at just his impact, it's just a safety blanket and a position that could very well be an important need if Becton isn't ready, you know, come week one.
Yeah.
Two other notes. This one was kind of funny.
This is what I'm most excited to talk
really
about.
Good. I'm excited. So drama queen, former Jet wide receiver Robbie Anderson hints at retirement, deletes the tweet. I want to say maybe an hour later. I don't know how much later it was, but he deleted the tweet, but not before Warren Sharp and a bunch of other people got to screenshot it and talk about it. You know, we talked about, I feel like one of our first podcasts was he wanted to come back to New York, and you know, you could get the vibe that things weren't gelling too well in Carolina for him. You know, he had the great first season. This past year, he was great as one of the worst receivers in football. When you saw this going around, what was going through your head?
Yeah. So first thing I have to say is I didn't actually like see the tweet. Like, was he like subtweeting someone or did he just say I might retire?
He talked about retiring.
Yeah. Well, while you pull that up, I'll talk a little bit about Robbie Anderson, because Robbie Anderson's one of those guys, you know, as a Jets fan, I'm sure many of you guys can relate that like in those years with Darnold and him, he was the man. And it was always like exciting to know that he was going to be he was going to be a good receiver, you know, and the fact that we had like a decent receiver who could play was exciting when it seemed like his career was going in a different direction. Blake, I see your face.
Yeah,
did you find it?
It couldn't be more straightforward. It says, "Ain't gonna lie, thinking about retiring." ...
Okay, yeah, so that's so classic Robbie. But I do like Robbie Anderson, like, and I liked him when he was on the Jets, and he did on his first year on the Panthers help lead me to a Dynasty Fantasy Football Championship, which huge. We seem to talk about every week. But I mean, so like things like that, you know, they're supposed to. You mix that with being in the Jets, having a couple good years. I think people forget that, like, we always talk about how the Jets haven't had a 1,000-yard receiver since they had two in 2015. He had like 940 or something. I don't know their number exactly, but in 2019, I think 2019 or 2018, he had almost 1,000 yards. But here we go. He goes to the Panthers and has like a pretty decent year, basically just getting fed right. But he was just getting fed screen passes and like running the ball behind, so like he did very well. Don't get me wrong. But Jets fans went nuts and they were like, well, that's a big miss by Joe Douglas. And it's like, all right, like, do we really need Robbie Anderson to be around while we were like purposely tanking and he's not all that good anyway? I think it's one of the smartest things he did, letting Robbie walk. And I think that the way that this team has kind of gone over the past few years and the way that Robbie ended up doing last year, I think it's just shown that we made the right decision. But because of kind of like that in 2020, that big like step by Jets fans to be like, well, Joe Douglas, you missed, like you should have kept Robbie around. We all knew it. And it's like, all right, now I kind of hate him because it just bothers me that so many people try to do the victory lap like a year after when he had an okay year, when it wouldn't have mattered if he was on our team anyway.
Wide receiver to me at this point is just like, if you have an elite guy, you keep him. If he is even a little bit below elite, you can replace his value with a rookie coming in. And we're gonna talk a lot about wide receivers today. One of those guys is Corey Davis. But I'm not bashing Corey before we get to it, but it's just like, I don't know, when Robbie Anderson walks, it's like, are you really going to give him that much money for just what good receiver play?
Right. And that's what's happened to the receiver market. Like
Christian Kirk,
not right. Like wide receiver threes are consistently getting huge contracts, and it's just, we signed Brashad Perriman in hopes that he would be the wide receiver 1 2 years ago, like things like that. And it's the wide receiver free agent market is not the best place to be unless you're going to land one of these guys. But 90% of the times they come in a trade or they stay with their team.
Exactly. Yep. So I don't know. Yeah, it's one of those positions where you're just like, maybe stay away. So yep, good decision there. He deleted it, so I'm assuming he's gonna come back and play.
He reported today. I saw it was funny just like getting that notification today. It said minor news. Robbie Anderson reports to
minor news. Oh, poor guy.
Because it's like, if that was like minor a big player, it would be big news.
Oh yeah, big time.
It's funny that we just use this like opportunity to talk shit about Robbie. I do like Robbie, but it's just like, as a football player, he's just a guy.
It's 3 or 4 topics of what happened in the last week, and sometimes when there's no football going on, you got to pull up some of the stuff from former players.
Oh yeah, and we got it. Like, we got to talk about these guys, if any Darnold news comes out, I'd love to talk about it.
I want to do a full episode on Sam Darnold. I think we need to relive that era. Yeah. Last housekeeping before we get to reading the room. I forget which sports book it was. I believe it was DraftKings. The Jets have been the most popular bet so far this offseason to make the playoffs. And not that we need to spend 5 minutes on that, just I think it makes sense. It's a major market team. New York and New Jersey now have legalized gambling. So I'm sure everybody there is hyping into this offseason that they've had and being like, yeah, this team's going to fucking go take it. But it is kind of nice to see like, oh yeah, they're getting a lot of love here.
Yeah. I think the thing with the Jets this year is they still have the holes on the offense and the question marks, and the second-year quarterback who didn't look good in his rookie year, that like it's easy for people to still easily write them off. I was listening to Fantasy Football Podcast the other day, and they were listing the teams that were going to have the 5 worst records, and the Jets were not in the top 5 teams they listed, but they were like brought up, so that's still kind of what the view is of them. But at the same time, I do think like the trendy thing is to pick the Jets as like, oh, this is the team that could do something. So I think a lot of people can kind of see the value. I mean, the second that win-loss over-unders or win totals came out, I bet the Jets. I got them at 5.5. They're at 6.5 now.
Oh wow.
It's just one of those things, or maybe I got them at 6, but it's just one of those things where I think they're the reason they're a popular team to take the step is because they have all of like the pieces to, the second-year quarterback who could take a step forward, the young receivers who could be good, the running back who could be good. But again, it's all question marks. So I do think there's a lot of value there. Might as well take a chance.
Yeah, and I think that's the fun thing about as we transition into the Reading the Room series is like you said, we've said it on every episode, and there's going to be one of those today where it's like there's going to be a grade that we give out that's probably lower than where it will be, could be drastically lower than where it would be at the end of next season or the middle of next season. So it's like you said, it's, people are buying into the quarterbacks, the receivers, parts of the defense, the secondary, offensive line, and it's all kind of just pushing things upward.
Right.
It's
Before
not pushing it upward. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Oh, it sounded like you were going to have a great segue there.
I,
So I
I was going to
apologize for
segue
that.
there and say that something that's not going to bring them upward is the linebacking room. But
oh, that's true. Well, I just wanted to say, as we dive into our third installment of reading the room, what I think I've learned is that I'm not as confident in the Jets roster as I thought I was, because it felt in my head. I was like, I was like, they got all the pieces, they got, and it's like, they still definitely very much have holes. And kind of, as you just said, a lot of these are question marks where maybe they're not holes come a year from now, but going over each of these position groups one by one, you kind of see that there's still work to be done.
Yep. And I'll segue a second time here. There's a lot of work to be done with the linebacking room.
That was good. You're a pro at this.
It's so bad, Teddy. Let's just start off. Let's talk about CJ Mosley.
Yeah,
where you want to start?
I love CJ Mosley. He's been a stud. He's been great. I don't even think he's like all that good anymore. Like last year, he he was important, and it's very possible that a lot of times that he didn't look great was due to like the lack of good defensive linemen and other linebackers playing their responsibilities. Like that's all very possible. But I definitely saw CJ Mosley take a step back last year in the way compared to the way that he played, in the first quarter of the Bills game or any year prior, when he was on the Ravens. I just worry about him. I mean, he's old. What is he? 32 years old.
I think it's 32.
He's not that good in coverage, and don't get me wrong. I think his leadership qualities that he brings to the team are very important. I think the fact that over, especially last year and this upcoming year, when our team is so young, having him out there is like essential. And without it, it would be very bad. But at the same time, he's not good enough for me to have any confidence in this linebacker room. Like if he was our veteran linebacker who was opposite some stud guy that we drafted or some third-year player, then it's like, all right, I can live with CJ Mosley, but he's not. And I don't know, man. I hate to like talk shit about CJ Mosley because he has been so great just like as a Jet, but he's just not good enough to like hold down the room,
No.
And it's just, you can't be too confident in just one like average good player.
All you said about the positives he brings is dead on. It's leadership, it is experience. He's good. He's solid against the run. That's the one thing that I would expect to pick up a little bit this upcoming year, just because you mentioned it and it's been talked about a ton. There's a lot of belief that just a better defensive line is really going to make things hum for these linebackers. And you would assume that would mostly have an impact with Mosley in the run game, which is one of his strongest assets. Before last season, I guess, took a little bit of a dip, but you're right. Not great in pass protection. He's getting older, paid a lot as well too. And, we're talking about the team for this upcoming season, but you take a look to the future for him. There's a potential out in his contract after next season. And if they don't pick that up, it's $18.5 million against the cap in 2023 and $18.5 million against the cap in 2024. So when you look at it, you're like, okay, sure. Cut the contract, maybe restructure, get him in on a cheaper deal. We talk about him as like the one kind of guy in this linebacking room, and beyond next season, good chance that he's not sticking around. So it's an important year for him, I think is the big part of what I'm trying to say is like,
I was just about to say, like, I don't at all think he's going to be like, when you were going through that, I was going to say like, he's definitely going to be gone, but the only thing that makes me not want to say that is the fact that like, if we get rid of CJ Mosley, we got to have a backup plan. You know what I mean? Like we gotta, and yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where like I want to commend the contract from Joe Douglas because there is purposefully an out. You know what I mean? Like it's not like that
Yep.
wasn't done by design, but I do think that on the 11,000 picks that they've used and free agent signings on safeties turned linebackers over the past 2 years, I think they were hoping to find a couple guys who stuck more than anyone has, you know. And we can move right into Hems and Nasruddin after this, which is exactly who that is, you know. But it's just this has been the position. I mean, go back to our first episode. I think was a free agency episode or something, and my one like big prediction was that the Jets are going to sign multiple linebackers in free agency. And I mean, maybe they technically did with Marcel Harris and a few of these other guys, but like they really didn't sign anyone of note. And what do you do without CJ Mosley? Like it's just that odd. It's like I get that he's important, but he's not as good as he was 2 years ago, or you know, even maybe last year. Like and one of the things, like he's gonna get his tackles. You know, what I like about CJ Mosley is he knows what to do. He's in the right spot and he's going to put in the effort. You know, he's like, so like last year, you'd always see him like around the ball, but that doesn't mean that everything else is, you know, it's kind of like Quincy Williams is always around the ball, but that doesn't mean that the rest of his game is very refined or great, you know?
Right. And with the two of them, and we'll go to Williams, I guess, more in depth in just a little bit, but both of them, it was more just like, they're out there so often. They're really the only linebackers that are producing. So that's why the tackles are so high. And for both of them, you know, obviously Mosley's more established and Williams is hopefully a guy that can turn into something, but it's just like you're out there because there's nobody else. So yes, the tackles are and the stats are going to pick up a little bit. So Nasruddin, you know, another safety hybrid. We've talked about this a lot and we've joked about it. Safety turned linebacker. Primarily was a special teams guy last year. He banged up his knee a little bit, still appeared in 12 games, but for the most part was a special teamer. Right now you would project him to be the starting weak side linebacker, I guess. And it's tough. It's tough to find stuff to talk about with it. It's not, and spin it positively.
Yeah. The thing, you know, it's a pretty late draft pick from 2 years ago that didn't really make a splash defensively last year. And, you know, it's okay. We have the hope of him, you know, taking that step forward and seeing if he can become a starter. I think back to the 2020 draft when he was taken, and, you know, I don't know exactly who this is about, which player this was about, but I remember there was a phone call of Saleh and he's talking to one of these players that they took in kind of these later rounds, one of these defensive players. And he says, you know, he's like, you're gonna be a part of this defense. And you're gonna like, we have a role for you in mind. Like, we know what you're going to be doing. You're going to be an important part of this defense. And I'm not sure if he was talking about Nasruddin or Jamien Sherwood, or, you know, potentially he was talking about someone else, but I always kind of thought he was talking about Nasruddin. So, you know, if he can take that step forward, that's great. But I think that, you know, in camp, it's going to come down to him or Marcel Harris, who they signed off, or they signed as a free agent, who played with the 49ers, you know, played with Saleh. He played there from 2018, 2021. I think it's really going to come down to those two in camp and who's going to get the job, you know, and I think that's probably one of the more interesting kind of just battles to watch in camp, just because we don't really know who's going to be the starter. I think this linebacker room as a whole, it's going to be interesting to see how it kind of all falls out and who ends up being the three that's out there. Because I mean, I'll just be honest, if I look at Mosley, Nasruddin, and Quincy Williams as your starting three linebackers, I'm not feeling too great.
No. The only thing that I would say, and it's a transition. He's going from, you know, playing a position a little bit back further, moving up to linebacker now. Like, that's a transition that can take some time. Not only are you adjusting to the NFL, you're adjusting to a new position, a new role. So the hope is with Nasruddin that he is still becoming that player. And I mean, it's only been 1 year in the pros.
Yeah.
So it's like, he still very well could be that guy, but I think that's why you see they sign Marcel Harris, a guy that has
Right.
experience in the defense playing the position. Why they're still taking a look at Quan Alexander, someone who will step in. He was the starting weak side linebacker in that really great 49ers defense 2019, I believe, 2019 or 2020, starting weak side guy. And of course, he's not that guy, but you still want him potentially around if these are your other options. And, say camp goes along and no one's really owning the job here. I think that's where you might see the transaction go through and bring Quan Alexander into the fold. So, you're hopeful that he becomes the guy that they project, but at the same time, he's a 6th round pick, changing positions, really didn't contribute much outside of special teams last year, banged up knee. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, and I think you nailed it there. I think that's what they'll do. They'll let Hamza and Marcel kind of battle it out, and then they'll look to bring in Quan kind of when it makes the most sense for them and when they feel like, okay, we actually do need this guy. And maybe that's next week. When they get through OTAs and that's how they've evaluated it so far, or maybe that's not until camp, or maybe it doesn't happen at all. But I think this is just a perfect example of what I feel is the theme of at least my portion of this Reading the Room series, which has been question mark, because that's what it seems like this Jets team is a lot of guys who you could say, hey, I think they're going to be great. Or you could say, hey, I don't really think they have it. And, it's fun to debate and it's fun to talk about and it's fun to dig up all these things. But at the end of the day, it just comes down to next season, is he going to perform on the field,
And I think the difference between some of the other positions is I think we can feel a little bit more confident about it, taking a look at a guy like
just in general.
Right. There's a ton
I do
of
feel more
marks,
confident that Garrett Wilson will be good.
Right. Or Sauce
Hamza.
Gardner is.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So maybe there are some question marks that
linebacker.
are better than this question mark for sure.
This question mark to me is more of like not a question mark. It's almost like but
yeah.
Opposite
it's like I'm gonna assume the worst until he shows me that that's not what I should be assuming, exactly. and I think that's fair.
Yeah, easily fair. And the only other part that I'll give credit to is I do think linebacker is, at least in this defense, one of the, I mean, it's every position's important, but it's probably the least impactful position on this defense. I think, you're going to get a lot of 4-2-5s now with the way that NFL offenses run. So you're going to have your slot corner out there most. So, I get not addressing linebacker at the top of drafts. And especially I think almost every linebacker that's taken in the first round underperforms. And I think it's one of those, it's like the running back of the defense where it's just like, get value guys later on. I mean, you think of, outside Micah Parsons was drafted 2 years ago.
That's what I was just going to say. I would love to have Micah Parsons.
But he was an edge rusher. He played edge rusher by like week 6. And so he was a defensive lineman at that point. And then the guy that was taken by the Washington football team, or the commies now, what was his name? He was so underwhelming. I'm not going to remember it.
I wish I could help you.
Nope. Jamin Davis. No. I'm not going to get it. Never mind. But it's one of those, what I'm trying to say is I don't think, like, yes, this is the worst position group by far on the defense, but I don't think it's the most pivotal one. Like, I'm not going to be taking wins away from this team because the linebackers are bad.
Yeah. And there is something to the fact that, like the D-line wasn't that good last year, and that made the linebackers look worse, and that probably made CJ Mosley and Quincy Williams, who were out there most of the time, look worse. The other thing I want to say is when we hired Saleh, last year, one of the main things everyone was talking about was, oh, look at this 2020 San Francisco defense, and look what Saleh did with these linebackers, and they're all overperforming kind of what was expected. That's something I would love to see, from the Jets. And it's something we didn't see last year, which I think when you think about a first year coach with a really young group, a lot of new guys, a lot of injuries, a lot of moving parts, I think that, it's okay for those to be excuses if those were actually the reasons why. So I'd really like to see whoever ends up being these starting linebackers, if they can come together and really just overperform, what our expectations are right now and what we kind of think of these players, I think that would just be a huge sign that, like Robert Saleh is having his kind of imprint on the defense and on these players, and like he was a linebackers coach, right? Like that's what he did. And I think that it would just be really great to kind of have that, like, okay, well, maybe we don't need the best, you said it's the running backs of the defense. Look at how San Francisco, they don't need the best running backs because just the way it's designed and the way they coach them, they can have just guys be really good. Let's have Saleh do that with the defense and with these linebackers.
And to that point, a guy that they kind of got somewhere out of that, I would say, at least with Quincy Williams this past season. That was a guy that was just a guy. And I'm not saying that he was a stud out there, but I think overperformed expectations at the very least, where, like you said, outside of Mosley, he was the only guy that was really doing anything at the linebacker position for them. Quinnen's older brother gets a nice pay raise this past offseason. They increased his salary from just under $1 million to 2.54. So, he's someone that I think they're at least invested in somewhat of trying to develop. And I think after what you got out of him in his first season with New York, it's like, hey, maybe this is one of those guys that, Saleh can develop into a starting caliber player.
Yeah, with Quincy, I think it'd be really easy for me to kind of continue to be pessimistic, which I've been this entire linebacking core, it seems.
How can you not?
Because he is that kind of guy who, like, he does have flash plays. And so a lot of fans easily are like, oh, this guy's a stud, when in reality, he still makes a lot of mistakes and has technical things to worry about. But what I do think about Quincy is that with those flash plays, I mean, this is a guy who flies all over the field. He's fast and he hits hard. And I think that it can't, like, flash plays really shouldn't be like undervalued, like if Quincy Williams isn't the greatest linebacker, but once a game is forcing a fumble, or once a game is going to blow up the line and have a sack for -7 yards, like those are important plays that can really help change the way that a game's going. So I think when you think about, like, okay, well, would you rather have Quincy Williams out there or some other guy who maybe has a little bit more experience? It's like, sure, maybe the floor might be lower with Quincy Williams, but he does provide that upside of, like, this is a guy who's going to go out there and number one, he's going to work his tail off, and number two, he's going to make some big hits and is going to be flying around the field. And if he can refine that with a coach like Saleh, maybe that's exactly what you're saying, where it just all comes together for him. But I think it is that two-sided coin of, like, yeah, maybe he's not as good as the way, like, if you just watch a game, he seems, but at the same time, a guy who kind of jumps off the film is a guy who jumps off the film,
There's a bunch of guys that have been like that in the last few years. I think of this past season, and it's at a much higher scale where the good and the bad are more noticeable. But Trayvon Diggs, cornerback.
It's crazy.
Of the Cowboys,
I was literally going to bring him up.
I mean, he gets
Look at
torched. He gets torched, man. But
what do you have?
Interceptions.
10 interceptions?
I think, 10 or 11. He was always
won a game. It seemed
a ball hawk. And it's like, yeah, those turnovers are huge. Getting burned is also kind of huge in a negative way. So it's like, yeah, I don't know. It's tough. Is the boomer bust guy better than the consistent guy?
It's a question we've been trying to answer for many years.
That's tough.
I mean, it obviously depends for sure, but it's just, if you substituted Quincy Williams with some other random guy, I like the idea that Quincy Williams has shown, like he's shown me on a football field that he can make plays that are gonna kind of drop your jaw, drop your drawers. Connor Hughes, the Jets reporter, he loves 69 jokes.
Dude, all the time. I see it always.
Like, did he see our podcast and he's like, oh, I got to start making more 69 jokes?
Probably. We should have
ours. Has nothing to do with the sex position.
Yeah, kind of.
Maybe it does.
Maybe a little.
We just like to pretend. No, it definitely does, but I'm just joking.
Um,
That was
Connor, yeah,
random, huh?
we know you're listening, but come on the show.
That would be sick.
We'll talk about 1969 all episode.
I'm a Connor Hughes fan.
He's a good guy,
but he loves making 69 jokes. I'm always like, damn.
And
bro.
by the way, while
Isn't
we're
this
here,
like your profession?
I don't think we ever gave him the credit for this, but I mean, he was telling us Jermaine Johnson, and sure, it wasn't at 10, but everybody was like, "Oh, it's a smoke screen. It's a smoke screen," and it was like, "No, he was on it."
No, yeah, no, but fuck that, because he cheated because
because
he
they're
made
telling
it seem
him.
like we were going to take him at like 4, which we didn't.
Oh,
no, he was
I
probably
thought they were
10.
saying 10.
No,
I think they were saying 10.
But we didn't take him at 10, so it doesn't count.
No, we didn't. But he was telling us that they loved him, and up to that point, we had not heard that
he
they
didn't love Kayvon Thibodeau.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Anyways, we're not here to talk about that. There were a
lot of Jermaine Johnson rumblings going around.
We'll talk about Jermaine next week. Any name outside of we've talked about Marcel Harris a little bit. You've got rookie DQ Thomas.
Yep, undrafted free agent who a lot of people have pretty high hopes for. So I'm kind of excited to see if he sticks. How many of these undrafted free agents can we keep having stick though before we get before we have too many players?
Well, that's where you've got to bring in what? You got to bring in 90 to training camp, right?
Right.
Is it 90? So we'll
93.
But then Jamie and Sherwood, Delshon Phillips, Javen White. Anything you want to talk about those guys at all?
Not particularly. No, I mean, the only thing, like, I feel like Jamie and Sherwood, like, the story's kind of the same as Nasruddin, like, they're both just guys who, like, didn't play a lot last year, didn't get the opportunities I expected them to get. Or if they did, they just didn't really, like, take hold of them. But they're kind of just in that same vein. Like, they were both drafted as safeties, switching to linebacker. Mm-hmm. They both are kind of late round picks, and they both just are guys that we're hoping can they're just kind of like a shot on potential. And so I do think it's just a guy to keep your eye on. Maybe he does take a step forward and becomes pretty relevant. It's definitely possible. The other guys, I mean, Delshon Phillips, he's played in the league before, so that's good that we got a player who's been in the league for 4 years, maybe. And then Javin Way, I don't know a ton about him, but I know that we got him from the Raiders practice squad, and maybe he'll be good. Yeah,
there's not much to me, the Jets have a type. Robert Saleh and Joe Douglas have a type, and it's these athletic.
I know, I'm so over it with their safeties to linebackers, but whatever.
But when they pan out, like if they eventually pan out, we'll be like, okay, we joked about it, but it worked. Right. So, Teddy, final grade for the linebacking room. I'm done talking about them. I think
I'm going D-. I guess the reason it's not an F is because of CJ Mosley.
Yep.
But it's really bad looking. Like
super ugly.
The only way to like spin it positively is to just say like, hopefully 2 of these guys are way better than we think they're going to be now. Like that's it.
Or even just the fact of saying like, they're not 35 years old.
Right.
23 and 24. Like if Nasruddin and Williams were all 35, this would be an F, because it's like they're at the end of their careers and there's no way that they're getting better at this point. So at least there's some upside. But yeah, I'm going to go D- as well too. Easily the worst position group on the roster. And
yeah, for sure.
Hopefully, like you said, one of these guys can become something.
Let's move on to maybe the best position group on the roster.
Wow, that's a teaser. But first, this ad from Busch Light. I'm drinking one. I'm wearing a Busch Light shirt.
Surprisingly enough, we are not sponsored by Busch Light, even though it seems like we are based on Blake's appearance.
By the way, Yankee chain out today. We are just about 30 games above 500. I know you tried, Teddy. Would be
I
the
had
season.
to give it up. I had to give it up in order for the Yankees to be good. I tried to be a Yankee fan last year. They sucked just because like that's my luck. That's my luck. But I gave it up, and then now all the Yankee fanboys can enjoy them being really good finally, because it feels like they should have been good for a while.
It's been so much fun. What
are you going to do when they lose in the second round of the playoffs, though?
Oh, I'll be miserable. I will be. I'll scream about the same stuff I screamed about for the last 3 years. It'll be Aaron Boone. It'll be Brian Cashman. It'll be honestly, I'm done with Garrett Cole.
It does seem though like their problem. I guess this isn't the Yankees podcast, but their problems.
It's New York.
their problems that they've had of just like the lack of, getting on base and like inconsistent pitching, like when it matters, it seems like they're
Everybody
doing better these days.
everybody outside of like one or two guys is doing their part, and that's
Yeah.
like that's the best, because before it
Yeah.
was like half the team was great carrying the shitty half, but now it's like, yeah, there's two guys that suck, everybody else is good. um that Yankees blurb was brought to you by Busch Light. I wish I had brought up a second one. Reading the room.
I brought
Wide
2 beers
receivers.
to this recording.
This was a very on brand beer day for both of us, because I hate Blue Light, and that's
Hey, you're
probably going to
always
get me
saying that.
murdered by people. It's the one light beer that I do not enjoy, but I've got my Busch lattes.
Yeah, well, that's why you moved down south, so you don't have to look at them anymore.
Exactly. Don't got them down here. Just Bud Light and Busch Light. Reading the room. Wide receiver. I want to talk about the more hopeful guy. How do you want to do this order? Because I have it down in this way, and I don't know if I like it where we start off with Corey, then we go to the young guys.
I don't
and
know.
then we
What are you
finish off with
feeling,
the
brother?
scrubs.
Whatever you like. Who are you most excited about to
I'm most
talk
excited.
about, at least?
That's a good point. We're going to start with Elijah Moore.
Ooh, okay. I'm
I
excited for
am
him
the
too.
most excited for Elijah Moore. Look, don't get me wrong. I like Garrett Wilson, and we'll talk about him in a second. But to me, a guy that is going to, from week one, be the number one target for Zach Wilson and the number one aid to this passing offense, it's going to be Elijah Moore. Wide receivers now are at a point where, and this is kind of also talking about Garrett Wilson, where right off the bat, it's not a position that necessarily is taking time. Now, some guys might take a few years to really get going, but more often than not now, you're seeing rookies come in from day one and dominate. And
you get 2 games these days. 2 games, and then you're in.
But aside from the injuries with Elijah Moore, his first season was fantastic. On pace for 1,000 if he played a full 17. Great in the slot. And that's been a big topic of conversation around the Jets, is like, who's going to be in the slot, Garrett Wilson or Elijah Moore? To me, I put Garrett Wilson on the outside. I put Elijah Moore on the inside. But that's just my preference. I think that Elijah Moore is more deadly in the slot. Whereas I think Garrett Wilson's body and catch radius are more better fit for the outside. But either way, what I'm trying to say is I think Elijah Moore is going to have, he was my number one pick for a breakout season. Give me all of the stock, because I think what you saw in a small sample size and the understanding that, okay, not only is he going to have more support around him with better tight ends, better wide receivers, like defenses aren't going to be able to hone in on him as much as they could last year. And, hopefully you get more consistent quarterback play, which we've already spoke about a couple podcasts ago. But if Zach Wilson is out there for a full year and he takes that year 2 leap, I mean, Elijah Moore should be a legit number one wide receiver in football.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think a lot of people are kind of down on Elijah Moore just because of, and I mean, some of this may be just like fantasy talk, because obviously, I mean, Elijah Moore as a receiver in the NFL proved he could play last year and proved he belonged 100%. It's not like that's a question mark of whether Elijah Moore is going to be a good receiver in this league, because I mean, he was great last year, and all he has to do is stay healthy, and I think that's going to continue. I think we can all get excited about Garrett Wilson. I think I agree with you that I think last year Elijah Moore played so much outside because he was their best receiver, in just terms of total talent. And so you wanted that guy on the outside. But I also think that what Elijah Moore is going to do this year is I think he's going to be that like security blanket, kind of like those games where when we were watching Sam Darnold, where Jamison Crowder's getting 13 targets, and you're like, oh, why is Jamison Crowder getting 13 targets? It's like, well, he's a reliable guy, he's safe, and he's playing in the slot, which is the easiest for a young quarterback to hit. So I think you put Elijah Moore in a role like that, who's more explosive, younger, faster, better. I think he's just going to explode, and I think Zach Wilson is going to go to him time and time again. And I just like, looking at his stats last year, I mean, he didn't play after week 12, I think was his last week. And led the team in receiving, which wasn't that great. He only had 538 yards, but he was the guy last year. And you look at the last, he came back from injury. He had 2 targets for 0 receptions at his first game back. And then after that, 6 targets, 8 targets, 6, 11, 8, 12, like he only got more and more involved and only started to dominate more and more as the season went on. And I think that Zach Wilson, like quarterbacks do, I think he's just going to know this is a guy I can trust. This is a guy I know who can make plays when I put the ball in his hands. And I think you hit it exactly right. And there's going to be better players around him this year. We have 2 tight ends who are established, good players who can receive. We have Corey Davis, who's a established receiver in the league. We have Garrett Wilson, who, is a top 10 rookie. So I think the door is wide open for Elijah Moore. And, I think it's probably best for this team if Garrett Wilson eventually does become better than him. But I have no problem saying that Elijah Moore is going to be the best receiver on this team this year. And I don't think it's out of the question that 2-3 years from now, he's not the best player in this room.
Yeah. Two big things that I think are so, I guess, eye-popping when you take a look at his production. 17-game pace is almost at a Jamar Chase level, which is crazy. If he had played 17 games at his pace, he would have finished with 96 catches, 1,300 yards, and 14 touchdowns. Jamar Chase had fewer catches at 81 this past year, but more yards, 1,450, and right around the same touchdowns. So on pace for a terrific high-volume season. 96 receptions as a rookie. Spectacular. And then the other thing, outside of that, he only had 3 games played where his catch percentage was above 50%, but he only had 1 drop in 12 games. So it's quarterbacks throwing off target passes. And we've talked about the inconsistent, wheel that they went on going through, Wilson and then White and then Flacco. And it was a revolving door at quarterback. So that plays a huge role into it. The catch percentage wasn't great. It was the lowest of their top 4 receivers, but 1 drop. So it really wasn't all his, but most of it was not his fault. So when I take a look at, consistent quarterback play and a full 17-game season, to the moon, give me it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, he's just a really good player, and look at what like draft Twitter thought of him a year ago, and I think he proved everyone right. So yeah. I'm excited.
The only other thing that I like to look at is project player ceilings. And when you look at his body and the way he plays, Tyler Lockett, big one that comes to mind, just a guy that is shifty, quick. To me, and Tyler Lockett, don't get me wrong, in his prime, great athlete, but I think that Elijah Moore is probably a little bit more of a freak athlete. And then the upper echelon is like light AB status, where it's just consistently going to be at like that 100 receptions a season. Like to me, if he gets to his ceiling, it could be at that Antonio. I got to get a new chair. This thing's squeaky as fuck, but AB level production for Elijah Moore in my eyes.
Yeah. And I mean, that's
a crazy thing to say.
Best receiver leagues. Yeah. Like ever with AB, best receiver seasons that we've ever seen almost. But what I say to that is just like, that just is so paired with, Zach Wilson and is Zach Wilson.
It's all attached to
this
it.
Great quarterback who can throw for 5,000 yards in a season and things like that. And hopefully he can support some of these other receivers, Yep. Where do you want to go next? Young or old?
Let's go young. All right. I want to go in the order.
Wilson.
I want to go in the order of the guys I'm excited about. And Garrett Wilson is number 2. Just like we said with Elijah Moore, rookie expectations, man. If you're a great rookie, you let it be known by week 3 at the latest. And we've talked about the schedule, and it's difficult, but especially in that front end. But when you get a comp to a guy like CeeDee Lamb, and that's the big, look that he's gotten around, and invested a top 10 pick, the expectations are that, look, just with the way receivers have gone now, that the top 3 taken last year all had fantastic rookie seasons. Jalen Waddle, Jamar Chase, Devonta Smith, guys beyond that even, tearing it up in their rookie season.
Elijah Moore.
Yeah. Drake London taking a couple picks before him. Garrett Wilson probably in a better situation, I would definitely say, than, having Marcus Mariota or did Ritter go there?
Yep.
Desmond. Or Ritter. So, I take a look at it. It's like the door is open. And not only that, to potentially be the wide receiver number 2 and to be a fantastic wide receiver number 2, there should be high expectations for him to perform in his rookie season.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, the way that these rookies have been coming onto the scene, it should not be out of the question for him to establish himself quickly, and I think that's what we should hope for as a top 10 pick. He was the most consistently ranked number 1 guy that I saw like throughout the draft process. We've obviously talked about him a bunch. Not on this show was he ranked number 1, but that's okay.
He was not.
And I also just think like what I think of when I think of Garrett Wilson and watching him over these past years, he doesn't flash athletically the way that like Jalen Waddle or Jameson Williams did to me. But what he did do similar to those guys is like the spectacular catch ability, and that was my thing with Jalen Waddle. And coming into the draft last year, there were the injury questions, all these things. But what I just remembered is like all the time, he's just going up and making these acrobatic, crazy catches that were so insane and just so consistently he was doing that. And I think Garrett Wilson is kind of in that same vein where like watching all these Ohio State games the past 2 years, he's just consistently done that. So it's just exciting, because that's the type of guy that I like, as a guy who's going to go out there and make catches like Jamar Chase makes, where it doesn't look like he's going to be able to catch the ball. And then, oh, wait, but the great ones do, and that's kind of what I'm hoping for Garrett Wilson is that he does more than just is like a good player. I really hope he can become, hope he can become elite.
I was just going to say, as you went to burp, the beers on the podcast are great.
I know I've been burping crazy.
I burp every time that it happens. I'm just like, I hope it doesn't pick it up too much in the audio, but it definitely does.
That's okay.
We can hear it from each other. Burping's fine. We're men. No,
I try to mute myself, but it's hard mid-sentence.
Yeah, no, you can't do that. No, despite us, and I had him as my 4th favorite wide receiver in this class. He was right around 3 and 4. Still one of the top players of the draft class. Still someone that, you expect. Okay, it wasn't like, yeah, we didn't have him at the top, but it was still like this group of 5 is very good. And I believe given the role that he's going to be entering into even early on, if he is just a very good number 3 while Corey Davis is out there with him too.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not going to complain. And then he'll slowly grow into that role where he is the number 2 guy. And then maybe if he is, this CeeDee Lamb type talent, he becomes the number 1. And then you have him and Elijah Moore as this really could be elite duo at wide receiver.
Yeah.
Wouldn't have been my pick. Obviously Drake London was my guy. He went 2 picks before. There's nothing you can do about that, but still a great all around receiver that just makes plays, great catch radius. I want him on the outside. And yeah, I think he's going to be a guy that is, he'll be a fan favorite easily for this team.
Yeah. And he just seems, I think the Jets have done a great job with this in general, but he just seems like a really like great kid, and a really down to earth, like smart guy. He's not going to be causing issues in the room. He's not going to be causing drama. Like he just seems like he's there to work and I'm excited for him. I think he's one of the biggest just kind of things that I'm watching as we get into training camp and preseason is just to see how does Garrett Wilson establish himself? Is he going to be the number 3 guy or is he going to be, one of the starters and what's this room going to look like? So yeah, it's exciting.
It is. Yeah, moving along. The third guy I'm most excited for, Braxton Berrios. We got to talk about Corey Davis. Let me
set the record straight here, brother.
Let me start off one thing. I'm going to go pro Corey Davis here for a second because I was ready to get angry about it and not angry, but just, not be the most positive about it. But then I got thinking, we're talking about Elijah Moore. We're talking about Garrett Wilson. Corey Davis provides such a valuable asset that neither of those two can. And as dumb as it seems, it's pivotal for this offense. The run blocking, like that's needed. That
That's a
is one of
fact.
it's like the number one thing that they talk about with wide receivers almost.
I
It's
feel like
funny.
this is disrespectful. This is the first thing you bring up about him, but all right, go ahead.
But it is what I'm gonna bring up about. No, that's a good point. But out there on the field, when you're going to be a run first offense, you need wide receivers that are big, physical, and can block. And he's one of the best run blocking wide receivers in football. So look, I was gonna call him the CJ Mosley of the offense. I was gonna say he's not old, but he's older, paid a lot, potential out in his contract after this season. But for this upcoming season, huge role because, like you said, we can. I've bought into the hype of Elijah Moore. We've all bought into the hype of Garrett Wilson. Corey Davis is a guy that we have seen at least on a football field play high level football, or at least consistent enough. You think about his best season in Tennessee when he was the number 2 to AJ Brown. Last year was fine. He's had injury histories before with his hamstring and legs that you start to worry about. But in terms of just like adding something to the wide receiver room that these two young guys with smaller frames can't really provide, that's a huge need for this offense is a run blocking wide receiver.
Yeah, it's a good point, like the complementary aspect of him. I also think like having Corey Davis be potentially your third wide receiver, is pretty great. And we've seen him thrive as a second wide receiver. And it's nice that we're going to go in and we're not going to be hoping that Corey Davis has to establish himself after 5 years of being a number 2, of just hoping, hey, maybe he can turn into a number 1. Now it seems like we have a couple guys who could potentially be a number 1, and Corey Davis can kind of just play his role. I do think in terms of like his season last year, I think it really is criminally underrated. I think he had 492 yards in 9 games. That's a little bit more than half the season. It's almost 1,000 yards pace, if you think about it that way. And he also just like, I think like when you look at his stats and you kind of think about, oh, maybe it was kind of underwhelming. It's like, well, Corey Davis was also dealing with a rookie quarterback, and he only played the first 9 games. So you look at that, that's Zach Wilson's 3 worst games the first 3 weeks of the season, and then it's a bunch of backups, which granted, those were kind of like the best games, but he didn't play bad. Week 4, he had over 100 yards. He had a touchdown. The next 2 weeks, 4 for 45, 4 for 47. That's not as great, but it's just, I think Corey Davis is like a fine player, like a very, solid wide receiver. And I think it's really easy for fans to kind of be like, oh, well, he stinks, like whatever. And it's like, sure, maybe this will be his last year. Maybe they'll take the out. That depends on kind of what happens with Garrett Wilson and Elijah Moore this season. But at the same time, I mean, we need more than 2 wide receivers. Right. And especially in this day and age, like you need almost like 4 to 5 guys that you can rely on to be out there on the field. So I really wouldn't be surprised. I mean, you got to think like Elijah Moore, Garrett Wilson, both on rookie deals next year.
Yeah.
Braxton Berrios, he's got a contract, but not a huge one. I think it's very, it would be very like realistic for them to just say, hey, we'll keep paying you because this room doesn't have a lot of money invested in it, and you're kind of a solidifying force.
Exactly. It's the reason why, the Eagles roll out $20 million a year for AJ Brown is because Devontae Smith is on a rookie deal for the next 3 or 4 seasons. So no, that's a good point. I would say probably, I mean, even with the fact that they still have cap space and they're not a team that really has a high payroll at all, it's a very young team. It's like, well, why not just keep them around? Because it's not like, yes, these players can get bigger, they can get stronger, but even heading into next season, it's not like these two are all of a sudden going to be the best blockers in the world. And I'm not trying to just say that that's all that Corey Davis provides, but I think in terms of
it's important to the team.
It's they talk about it all the time. They always talk about the importance of receivers out there that can be physical in the run game. And when you have younger guys that are undersized, having someone who's a little bit older, a little bit bigger in his frame and actually willing to, be a strong blocker, that's to me like, okay, yeah, he's probably valuable enough to keep around through the contract, especially when they're not going to be in a bind to be paying all these guys just yet. I mean, who's the next guy up for his his big deal? Is it Quinnen?
Denzel Mims.
Oh,
Oh,
right.
I thought
That's
we were
it.
talking in the
That would
receiver
that would have
room.
been a good transition. Let's transition into these other
No,
guys
yeah,
now.
Quinnen. I mean, Quinnen will try to get his deal done this year. I mean, I don't. I'm
It's
trying to think of
Quinnen.
anyone else from that draft class. There's nobody. I mean, that
It's
was the
Quinnen.
draft before
And
JV,
maybe
right?
and
Then
maybe not even
Makai.
him if he's playing 50% of snaps again next year.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen. But
No.
to focus on Corey Davis, I just want to end it with like, I think I'm excited to see what he can do. I hope he stays healthy. And I
Yep.
think he's just going to be really solidifying for the team and for this room as a whole. And I also don't think you can undervalue like just what experience brings. And when you look at this core room, you know, Corey Davis is the guy in there who's bringing the experience and who's going to be able to tell these guys things they don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Him and Elijah Moore, you know, both probably have a relationship with AJ Brown, you know, and just things like that. I think he provides a lot for this team, even if it's not just what he does on the field.
Definitely. Yeah, no, I the more I was ready to like joke about him, but after talking about Elijah and Garrett first, I was like, you know what? His role is needed on the team. Um, two other guys that we want to talk about. I not as much to say with the three. I mean, Braxton had a really strong finish to last season, really strong connection with Zach Wilson. They're boys off the field as well too. I call him White Lightning. Wide receiver 4, a special teamer, huge asset to the team. Good character guy, loves to
All
be there.
pro returner, great
Yeah.
guy to have, especially, you know, they want this fourth receiver spot to be someone who's contributing on special teams. I think that's why Denzel Mims really does need to show like he's got to contribute, or what's the point of keeping him around as wide receiver 5 if he's not going to be playing on special teams, you know?
Right.
I think Braxton Berrios is going to be more involved than we all than probably everyone thinks. And, you know, I could be a little off on that take, but maybe if it's not that many touches a game, maybe if it's still, I mean, toward the end of the year, he really, I think like his last couple games, he was very heavily involved when we had a lot of injuries, but there were a lot of weeks where he was having like 1 to 3 targets, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But I just think like there's gonna be plays designed where it's Braxton Berrios on an end around, or it's Braxton Berrios on a quick out. Like there's just gonna be, they're gonna go out of their way to have Braxton Berrios be involved in the game plan somehow. You know, he's an all pro returner. You know, he's that Tavon Austin type player, or you know, just someone, Brad Smith, who you just try to get them the ball in open space and they're going to be able to do something with it, you know? And so I just think like having a guy like Braxton, who Zach Wilson has depended on and gone to, and he was the first guy he seemed to have a connection with. And it's like, and he's obviously his best friend, you know,
Yep.
just having that type of guy who you're not relying on to be great. You're not relying on to be a starter, but who, when he comes in, I'm not worried. And I think they're going to go out of their way to get Braxton in the game. I think it's good. You know,
Yeah.
It looks good.
But I totally agree. It's not like he's just going to be only a returner. I think when you pay him the money you do, and you saw what he was capable of, I mean, he could be one of the stronger wide receiver 4s in the league.
I like
Like how many, like, I don't know. I don't know every team's wide receiver 4, but I know that most teams stop after 2 or 3. So, you know, not that he's like this world changer, but you've seen guys almost of his build, and it's funny because it starts in New England, and now you're starting to see it around the league, and it's not a race thing, but all these white slot receivers that are just being fed the ball now, and a guy, you know, Hunter Renfrow gets a $32 million extension. It's like these guys are super valuable to their team.
Yeah, and I don't think it's like out of the question. I mean, you got to think Braxton's probably in his 3rd or 4th year, or no, well, he just resigned. So what is he in his 5th year, 4th or 5th year? 5 years down the line, you know, when Braxton Berrios is 31 or whatever it is, I like wouldn't be surprised if he's kind of like hanging around in a similar vein of like Jamison Crowder or Cole Beasley, like these guys who you just are like, they're PPR machines, like they're just always getting receptions. They're
Yeah.
just always kind of around, always pretty productive. Like Like, I would not be surprised if that's Braxton Berrios in 3 to 4 years, so
Definitely.
Jesus. So yeah.
The burping episode.
Yeah.
Do we really need to Denzel
We've
Mims,
talked about Mims on like 18
every
episodes, so we don't need to
podcast.
really rehash it. It is what it is. We hope he gets better. I'm a Mims guy. Blake's not a Mims guy.
I'm not.
But it would be nice to see him just like contribute. But in that same vein, it's like, where is the role for him? It's not really that clear. Last year, I remember all the time it would be like, oh, Denzel Mims in, it's a run play. And then it would be a run play and he would block, which is cool. That's fine. But you would like to see him contribute a little more, but we don't need to dive into it.
No,
so
we
Blake,
feel the same way. Yeah.
I see that you have changed your final grade from what it was originally.
I did.
Which I was not happy with your first grade.
You matched. Oh no, I copy and pasted.
Right. I did not realize that when I was looking in the show doc.
I had copy and pasted, so Teddy saw a D- next to wide receiver. No, that's
right.
That,
I was like, what is Blake thinking?
No. I'm gonna give him a B.
I like that.
To me, and this is one where Garrett Wilson turns out and he's the best rookie of this class, and it's evident year one. We've talked about the position groups that are like right now it's here, but by the end of the season or midway point, it's like up here. Right. Wide receiver, if Elijah Moore continues his trajectory and Garrett Wilson is the best rookie wide receiver, that duo could be one of the not strongest, but one of the stronger duos in football. Oh, fuck you. You had to go and change my grade. I was a little bit ahead of you, and then I just see in the
No, well, I'll tell you. Listen, this is what just happened. I just changed from a B- to a B+. Well, this is what happened. Blake rated him a D-, and I was like, damn, am I way higher on these guys than I thought?
You really thought that I graded them like as a D-?
I really thought you just like hated Corey Davis.
Come on.
No, I guess I'll stick with the B-. That's fine.
You can do whatever you want. Give him a B+.
No, I want to give him a B+. I really want to give him an A. But the thing is that you can't give him an A because we Corey Davis has to be better and he has to show he's better. Elijah Moore has to prove it. Garrett Wilson has to prove it.
A's belong to Jamar Chase,
right? Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Taj Boyd. I get
even
it.
Even B+ belong.
Yeah.
To those.
All right. So maybe the B. Maybe I just don't want to do the same grade as you.
You can. I understand.
But so I'll go with a B+, just because I have to be the optimism here on this.
I know. I like how I was finally gonna. I'm like, oh, I'm rating something higher than Teddy, and then he's like, psych.
I don't know. I get very swayed by opinions, but I just think it's a good room, and I think like I'm in this stage where I really do think that things are going to start going right. Like the way last year's draft class went, where all of a sudden it's like, oh, our top 4 draft picks are all actually good players. Like, what a change of pace, and I kind of expect that to continue. I mean, we had 3 first-round draft picks this year. Like, is it crazy to think 1 or 2 of them could actually be pretty good? And, maybe Garrett Wilson is what everyone thinks he's going to be, and so I'm excited for this receiver room. And I just think that it's exactly what this team needed. It supports Zach Wilson. Obviously, they need to grow into themselves. Obviously, they're not going to be perfect right off the bat, but I mean, it's a good group. I mean, the only thing that you could kind of say the Jets could have done better, and it's purely based on your opinion, is instead of drafting Garrett Wilson, maybe they made a trade for a Deebo Samuel or an AJ Brown or whatever, but they didn't, and now it's all right. Let's see one of these young guys can turn into that, and obviously right now that seems like a hopeful, but that's how this game works. I was low on Jamar Chase last year just because I wanted to be contrarian, and then look what happens. He actually was the best receiver ever.
The best receiver.
You know what I mean? Like, he had the best rookie season ever. Oh shit. So it's possible for these young guys, and you're never gonna have like that viewpoint of them until they actually go out and do it. So
right,
especially like the fact Elijah Moore was able to show up before getting injured last year. The fact that I think Corey Davis had a pretty decent season before getting injured. Garrett Wilson, he's a rookie who was a top 10 pick. I really do like this room.
It's a good one. It's one of the stronger ones, and could very well be outside of defensive line, offensive. I mean, it could be one of the strongest by the end of the year.
Outside of quarterback.
Yeah.
That'll be an A+ by the end of the year when Zach Wilson's leading the
Would
league
love so. Would
in
love that to
yards.
be true. Would love that to be true.
Me
All right,
too.
Teddy. So we covered a really bad group in the linebackers. We both gave a D- there. And then shout out to CJ Mosley for not making it an F. And then wide receivers, I go B, you go B+. Anything else that you want to touch on before we wrap up today?
I'm good, man. I gotta go.
We
sleep,
spent.
probably.
I was just gonna say we spent a lot of time. We spent more time than usual before the show talking and catching up, and then now we're just recording a little bit later than usual, but it's all good.
That's all right. That's all right.
We're hanging.
It was a blast. Thank you all for listening. Follow us on Twitter, NYJ_chasing69. There we go.
Crushing it.
What else do we say? Like our YouTube. Follow us on Twitter, like and subscribe, Spotify, Apple Music, leave a rate, leave a review. Fuck yes.
Crushed it. One last thing. Yeah, that was great. One last thing. It's going on right now. I don't know the score. Who's winning game 5 of the NBA Finals tonight? Don't look at the score.
I thought you wanted me to tell you.
We're gonna put out. We're just
the
gonna
Celtics.
predict.
I'm a Celtics boy.
I got the Celtics tonight.
I'm not a Celtics boy, but I like them in this scenario.
I think they're gonna win tonight. Awesome.
All right.
Well, maybe we'll be wrong. Who knows? Awesome. Thank you guys so much for listening. We'll talk to you next week.
Peace.